men are men are really struggling. We're really struggling. And I think this whole conversation around masculinity over the past 20 years has just been about toxic masculinity. We've delegated the role of fathering and of men to just finances. The average father spent 20 minutes a day speaking with their children. I was like, man, I'm so fortunate I kind of figured this out just before my son was born. I'm looking 4 days before my son was born, I figured this out. Stop making goals, make standards, and have non-negotiables. Start with compassionate accountability for yourself. You're looking at changing the world, stop. Look at changing yourself first. And just start with you. And the way that you do that is through compassionate accountability.
So I want you to take a moment now and think back when you were young. Do you remember who your first role model was? A role model could be someone different than somebody that you actually admire. For me, I'm a big sports fan. And growing up in Canada, I was a huge Montreal Canadiens hockey fan. And in that era, it was Guy Lafleur. Now, I idolized Guy. And while I wanted to be like him, when hockey didn't pan out for me, I was left with a hollow role model because really it was all about the hockey and not much more. I didn't know what anymore because I really didn't know any more about him. Remember, this was in the 70s. There was no Google or social media for us to look up about this guy. But what about today? Sure, those things do exist, but how can we make a sports figure a role model? And should we even be having that as one? Well, today we're going to unpack the importance for men, young men and old, to have a male role models and how that can shape your life. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on our latest content, as well as helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I just want to say I'm truly grateful. Now, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Growing up, who were your role models? Think about that for a moment. Who were your role models? And why did you choose those individuals to model your life after? A role model is so important in shaping who we are as men. They can shape us positively and negatively. But what it comes down to is having a role model that guides you to become more of the man you aspire to be. And to help us discover the importance of role models is my guest today. Dylan Roos is a master NLP practitioner, accredited health coach, and masculinity coach. Dylan mentors young men through his flagship program, Prince to King. He's also worked extensively in men's space for 4 years now and is passionate about reshaping masculinity for the modern men. Welcome to the show, Dylan. How are things today?
Thanks, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. And your last name is one of the best last names I've ever heard. I was looking at it and the lead up and I was like, I've got no idea how to pronounce that. But then that just rolled off your tongue, mate. That is a great last name.
Oh, appreciate that. Appreciate that. I always, when people ever ask me, how do you spell that? I just said S-M-I-T-H. It takes a little bit of time for it to settle in, but yeah, I appreciate it. So listen, Dylan, in the men's work that we do here at The Awakened Man, we talk a lot about each one of us being on our own hero's journey, but we call it a hero's quest. So tell us about how the trials in your life have shaped who you are and paved the road for the work that you're doing today.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I would say that the trials are the exact reason why I got into this work, which is, looking at the hero's journey, oftentimes what happens, especially when you get towards the end of it, and I think it's return and contribution, right? When you get to the end of the hero's journey. And so for me, a couple of standout trials was leaving high school and not knowing what I wanted to do with my life and having that big question of, what am I going to do with my life? I grew up playing pretty high level sport, state level sport, AFL. My dad was a professional athlete, professional coach. So I always just thought, okay, I'm going to go down that path. And then in Australia, we get drafted at 18. And if you don't get drafted at 18, it's pretty hard to get drafted as a top age young man. And so I didn't get drafted at 18, and I only played one more season. And we can get into why, because that's actually an interesting story too in itself as to why I didn't keep playing, but stopped playing and then was stuck with that question. Geez, all right, what am I going to do with my life? I'm 18, 19 years old now and I'm not doing sport. I've just spent 19 years thinking I was going to play sport. Okay, let me figure this stuff out. And so that was a massive, from 19 to 25 of figuring out what I wanted to do. And I say I was pretty fortunate because at 25, that's relatively young to have found a purpose in life. And I have found my purpose. I'll be in this men's space until I die. And so I'm really grateful and fortunate for that. But the 19 to 25 time was really difficult. And even 25 to I'm 28 now, the last 3 years have been really difficult too, in that I went to a private boys' school in Australia, and the trials over the last 3 years have been not comparing myself to the success of my classmates or anybody else that I knew, which has been pretty difficult, especially when I was working part-time in my purpose and I was a barista and having to drop my ego time and time again of just keep at it, Dylan, keep at it. I think I journal almost every day, and I finish journaling every day with just keep going, just keep going. And so that was really difficult for me as a 19-year-old, not knowing what I wanted to do. From having so much purpose growing up my entire life, sport gave me such a sense of purpose, to then not having any purpose at all was really difficult. And I think that definitely shaped me into doing this work, because so many young men are entering the workforce, leaving school, and they don't have an idea, and they'll just go and study because that's what they've been told to do. And then they'll go and get a job, and then they'll wake up one day at 45, 50 years old, and they're miserable because they've just really not given it a lot of thought that, wow, I'm actually going to spend 40 hours minimum probably a week for 40 years of my life. My opinion was, I better fucking love what I do if I'm spending that much time. So I was fortunate that I had that mindset, and that helped me through my trials. Was just like, I remember the first time I got a full-time job, and I got, I think, a week in, and I was like, nah, I'm not working for someone else. This is not for me. And I just had that self-awareness of, no, this is not for me. And so that was a big trial for me, 19 through to 25. And even, as you're aware, the hero's journey just is a cycle. You just keep going and going and going around and around. And then the last 3 years has been difficult in staying true to my course and true to that belief of, I can't work for someone else. There's nothing else I want to do. This is what I want to do. The money will come, and just having faith that it will come, sort of thing. And then when I was 20 years old, I went through a really bad breakup with my girlfriend at the time. And like most men, especially most young men, I think I stayed at a mate's place. I was living with her at the time. I left her place, went to stay at a mate's house. I think I cried for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and that was it. I'm over it. I'm done. Let's go, move on, next thing. And that mentality of men don't cry, men don't show emotions, but probably on a deeper level, men just get over it and they just keep going. And that's what we do. And I think that's an admirable trait for a lot of areas. And I think it's a detrimental trait for some areas. And it does take a level of discernment to figure out when to push through and when to actually go, no, hang on, we need to hold up here and we need to deal with some shit. So at 20, I did not deal with my shit. I turned to alcohol. I turned to sleeping with women. And that was my crutch for 6 months. And then finally, again, I say finally, 6 months compared to a lot of people on their journey is not a long period of time. But for me, six months of bad behavior, poor habits, drinking, eating shit, losing my exercise routine, everything kind of collapsed. And then I didn't get out of bed for a week. And that was my wake up call of like, oh shit, I haven't left my bed in a week apart to get like takeout or food. That was the only reason. Okay, something's wrong here. So I put my hand up, went to see a psychologist, and that's when I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorder. And so that's also a big driver of my work, because I know what it was like to really struggle. And then as I stepped into the work, I realized, holy fuck, men are men are really struggling. We're really struggling. And I think this whole conversation around masculinity over the past 20 years has just been about toxic masculinity. And we can get into that. I fucking hate that. Like, I never use that term in my coaching. I'm only focused on the healthy, positive male role models that you touched on. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm focused on. And that's not to say I turn a blind eye to bad behavior or poor behavior. On the contrary, it takes strong, masculine, healthy men to step up to tyranny, to bad behaviors. Weak men don't do that. And if I had to define toxic masculinity, I would say that is what it is. It's weak men, because that's really, and I don't use it, but toxic for society. And so, so those were my two big things. And even probably earlier, if I look through high school as I was growing up, I would say my trials were very similar to every other young man, very similar, understanding my identity, trying to figure out what it means to be a man, trying to figure out what I stand for, trying to navigate girls and the social scene, all those things, which are really common too, just really drives my work now, because I want to be able to support and challenge young men through their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I just really love and appreciate that you're being so vulnerable there and sharing all the challenges that, some of the challenges that you face through, and especially when you're dealing with anxiety and depression. I was making some notes here. So that's good stuff. And one of the things we talk a lot about in my work is about having purpose. And, the statistics are out there for people to find out. But I know as guys get older, and you talked about, you didn't want to be in a role or a job and 45, 50, and then find out what the hell happened to my life. And I know for men who are getting in that age range, and they go to look to retire, those that don't have a sense of purpose or something to carry them on forward will die a third of the time earlier than men who actually have something planned, something they can look forward to. And we're not talking about big type life purpose. It's about having some purpose.
Yeah.
And so
you don't need to go and terraform Mars with Elon Musk.
Exactly. Right. You just need to have something that, gives you a reason to get out of bed. And you were already figuring that out at, 19, when you really had no choices. Your life that you had thought about and planned and worked for just didn't happen. And so that's why what I was getting ready to have our conversation today, I was so impressed that you're working in the men's field, but you're working with young guys. And I think that's where, it's the next generation. It's those folks, it's those gentlemen, that how we can raise that. So let's talk a little bit about why you feel that male role models are so important, and how it is that you're bringing that message to the people you work with.
Yeah, they're so important, because you look at any of the statistics, you look at any of the literature around fatherlessness, and you can see what a massive hole that leaves in the lives of young men. And I'm sure it also leaves a massive hole in the lives of young girls too. I just haven't done my research on that in particular. But even the fact that now we need to justify it with research is, to me, bizarre, because what we have done is we've delegated the role of fathering and of men to just finances, to just take care of the family financially. You think about when families split up, the only responsibility that they get is financially. You have to pay child support, and maybe you'll get visitation. Yeah. And you it should be not necessarily the opposite, but it should be minimum of time spent. When you look at the literature on, in America, it's really bad. And America's a great case study, because the fatherlessness rates in America are, I think, the greatest in the world. And so you take America as a case study for how we should model the rest of the world and say, fuck, dads are important, men are important. I don't, because some people have misconstrued what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The actual father figure, yes, 100% important, the actual father. But if you don't have a father, or if you do, you have divorce, or the dad's died, or any number of horrible situations that have played out, the father figure, the male role model, is just as important. And so it's imperative that you bring other men around. And we're really in an experiment in the modern world with what's happening, because only in the last 100 years has custody gone to the mothers, which is really interesting. And that is partly because of outdated laws of the children were the property of the father, I believe, when I was reading. And
Yeah.
but I found that really interesting. It was like, oh, for all of history, and that also, again, it does play into the outdated laws because men were the only people working, so they're the only people that could provide.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to know, oh, we've gotten a lot worse in the last 100 years. 85% of criminals are fatherlessness in the States.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other statistics that support that. But again, I just found it really interesting that I even needed to, when I was getting into this work, provide statistics. And that comes back to the rhetoric we've heard over the last 20, 30 years of masculinity is toxic. And that has been the only part of the conversation. And so we haven't given rise or any focus to the amazing work and job that the majority of men are doing, the effort that the majority of the men are putting into their lives, and into being better versions of themselves and to providing. So it's just reflects the mentality that we have in regards to men. Hey, just that's it. You go off for work, and you go off and work for 40 hours out of the home, and then you come back. I think the statistic I read was the average father spent 20 minutes a day speaking with their children. I was like, man, that's, and none of what I'm saying, it comes from compassion and empathy. I'm not trying to say like, and shame men or shame single mothers or any of that. It's like, man, we have set up a society. I say this all the time. If we could set up a sick society, if that was what you were trying to do, we've achieved it. And so we're not doing too great. And the main reason, because one of the main kickbacks to that is, well, women can teach boys good values, and women can teach boys how to be young men. And my kickback is, no, you can teach them good values, yes, but you can't teach a boy how to be a man. No. You cannot do that. Only men can do that. And I will die on that hill that men are the only people in the world that can teach boys how to be men. And I will die on the hill that women are the only people that can teach girls how to be women. So it's not like I'm saying men can do everything, and because I'm not saying that women can do everything. I'm saying that we have certain roles, and for thousands of years, it's tried and true, right? Mm-hmm. Cultures that never could communicate with one another, they were all over the world. They understood that, oh, we need to do a rites of passage. We need to get men around these boys because this is the time where they need men the most. And for girls, this is the time that girls need women the most. And so it's tried and true for thousands of years. We're just living in an experiment in the last 100 years that's going horribly wrong. And I talk about like obesity rates, mental health and suicide rates, divorce rates, cardiovascular disease and heart attacks. We're not healthy. We're not healthy physically. We're not healthy mentally. We're not doing well. And so we need to go and look back and take some humility and go, oh, fuck, we fucked up here. How can we make life better for ourselves? How can we make life better for our next generation of kids? And a big, big part of that is rites of passage. And a big, big part of that is bringing back the importance of masculinity and male role models. Again, the fact that I even have to hone this in is just, but it's just the current state that we're in. And I will hone this in. Men are necessary. Men are needed in all of our lives. And the healthier the man is, the better he's going to be, obviously. And again, it's not to say that we just let men roam the countryside raping and pillaging again. That's not it at all. But it takes healthy, strong men to stand up to weak men. Because physically, that's what it takes. Physically, a strong man to step up. And only in that place can we start to elevate society.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. And you bring up so many great points there. And, really talking about, you're mentioning, toxic masculinity. And I'm a big believer is that there's toxic behavior and it doesn't need to be with masculinity. There's toxic femininity as well. And I think part of the challenge is that because we're in this culture now where we're trying to feminize the men and feminize young boys. And I think that's where we're really struggling, is that we're losing that identity of who we are. And I like your point on, the fatherlessness home situation and the challenges that's bringing forward. And it's because there is no male role model in these homes that these children, these boys are struggling. And the girls as well, because they still need to see a man, how their mother gets treated, how their brother treats a woman properly, right? They need that guidance. That's not going to come from from mom. That's going to come from dad, and that has to come from a male figure. And so you just hit the nail right on the head, Dylan.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. It's and it's about removing this them versus us mentality. I'm a big believer of like it's not about going to war with the sexes. It's about unifying the sexes and about unifying society. And
Agreed.
again, America's like I'm Australian and American, so I lived in Australia, but I've grown up coming to America once or twice a year, and it's such a battleground on every issue is a battleground. Like every opinion is a battleground, which is really interesting because you're constantly going to battle then. And it's like, man, there's no empathy, understanding, compassion. There's no room for, okay, tell me what you think. Tell me why you think that. Okay, that's interesting. I disagree with you, but thank you for explaining. And that's interesting. And let's go grab a beer, right? And I think it's a lot more common in Australian culture that there's that ability to disagree and then just go for a beer afterwards. I've got mates who back home that I like really disagree with some of their beliefs, but at the end of the day, like they're still my mates. I still got a lot of love for them, and I don't want to agree with people on everything. That's for me. That's weird. That's like, oh, you're a clone of some ideology because you're saying just the same thing that I hear everyone else say, or you agree with everything I'm saying. That's weird. Let's find a way that we disagree, right?
Yeah.
Let's buy that because great. That shows that we both think for ourselves. And I think that's also lost is this critical thinking. We've outsourced so much of our power to like, tell me what to think, tell me what to say, tell me what to do. And I think, again, coming back to masculinity, strong men never had that mentality for thousands of years. It wasn't tell me what to do, tell me what to say, tell me what to think. It was like, no, this is what I think, this is what I say, and this is what I do. And then the society kind of allowed the molding to happen around that mentality, whereas now we're just crumbling at any sign of stress or opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's come back to your life again and ask, and I want to ask you that who were the role models that you had in your life, and how did they impact and shape you?
Yeah. I was really fortunate that I didn't grow up in the current era of social media. And so, Instagram kind of got big as I left high school. Facebook, I didn't get until I was 16. And I wasn't active on those platforms until I really, got to 2022. So my role models were people that I could see, feel, and touch, which again was what we've had for thousands of years. So I was really lucky that my dad's mates were good men. I was really lucky that I grew up in a football club that really had great values and great humans. So I grew up around some of Australia's greatest athletes and greatest leaders. So I was really fortunate in the people that I had around me and was learning through osmosis really on this is what it means to be a man. This is how we show up. This is what we do and what we stand for. And dad was big because of his role and because of what he did. He was a coach as I was in my teenage years. And so he revolutionized leadership and culture in Australia and in Australian sports. And so values were always at the forefront of my mind. And I spoke about this on a podcast just recently, but even just because he was famous, I had to be really aware of our family's personal brand. I had to be really aware of that growing up. And so that really helped me and shaped me make better decisions than what I would have made had I not had that kind of hanging over my head of like, hey, you do something, this isn't just you, it's impacting, it's your whole family. And even growing up in that environment, I got arrested for drink driving when I was 20 years old. And so I got arrested. Long story short, I got arrested, and then it was in the papers a month later when I was meant to have my court date. And I was like, what the? And I'd grown up with that mentality of Dylan, what you do reflects the family. And I was like, what the fuck? Why is this in the paper? Why is this on the news? Why is this in the radio? This is ridiculous. Don't they have anything better to do? And dad just he was really good. He just said, he's a mate. We've been over this. Like, everything that you do reflects who you are. And because of who I am, it reflects the family too. And so that was a massive learning curve for me of like, oh, okay, I kind of knew it. Now I know it. So yes, I was really grateful. I just had great men around me. My mum was a beautiful woman, beautiful role model. She still is to this day. I don't know why I said was. And so yeah, I just had good people around me that supported me and supported my growth, and
Nice.
really fortunate.
I'm so glad to hear you mention your mom as well, right? And while we're talking about, doing men's work, to hear you say that your mom was a role model as well. And
Mm.
and as we've been saying, right, it's not about a battle of the sexes. We need each other. We
Yeah.
need we need men and women to work together. We need husbands and wives to work together. We need moms and dads to work together. So I'm so grateful that you mentioned that. And so, for someone who may not have had the opportunity to have a famous father and a famous family, how do you recommend them? How do you recommend for them to find a male role model? Is that like, are there specific attributes that someone should be looking for, or is there something else? How do you work with your
Yeah.
folks?
I think it's going to come down to, so what do you value personally? And so start there. Okay, what do I value? Unfortunately, if people were really honest, if they were really honest, they value money, and for
Mm.
young men, they value women, which is a problem. And I don't know if this is the chicken or the egg in terms of, again, so bringing it back to social media. I don't know if that's because social media promotes men and who make money, and then men who get a lot of women or beautiful women. That's who they promote, and so that's what we're seeing every single day. And so I don't know if it's, again, the chicken or the, if it's already kind of ingrained in masculinity in terms. And when I say that, I mean we want to be the alpha in
Mm-hmm.
regards to, we want to um we've always wanted to be at the top of the food chain as men, right? We're very competitive. Men are forged. We love competition. That's kind of how masculinity rolls out. And so I'm not sure if it's there, and then social media is playing on that and playing on it in a really poor way in regards to, okay, we're going to promote whoever makes the most money, and they're going to get the most followers, and they're going to get the most famous, and they're going to get the most money, and they're going to, and then we look at that. So I think you have to really be aware of your values. And if you have that honest conversation and you go, fuck, hang on, if I look at who I'm following online, I'm following this dickhead, I'm following this dickhead, I'm following this dickhead. Oh, shit. Okay, I do value money and sleeping with girls, and I value really good looking women because I follow 50 different Instagram models. Then once the awareness kicks in, I think majority of people go, I don't want to value that. Let me change my value system. And so for me, I've always valued kindness, empathy, compassion, and leadership. And to break leadership down, responsibility and being of service to the community, to the family, to the people around you, to your friends, to your
Yeah.
parents, to your family members. And so those are kind of my big values, are around service, responsibility, kindness, compassion, empathy. So I look for people that exhibit
Yeah.
that also have success, because I do value success. I want to be successful. I want to make money, but I want to make money so that I can provide for my family, so that I have greater levels of freedom, so that I can spend more time with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what drives me. So again, it's not about demonizing money. And in my journey, I think I had so many issues with women in regards to, that's how I define my masculinity. So it was like, okay, I stepped out of high school as the athlete. Like, I was captain of my high school basketball team, and I was state football. My dad was who he was, and so that's how I was a man. I was unbelievable at sport. And then I left high school, stopped sport. My girlfriend broke up with me, and my girlfriend cheated on me with my best mate. And then I very quickly went from, I'm an athlete and that's what makes me a man, and I wore that mask around, and very quickly went to, oh, I'm actually pretty good with talking to girls and getting women, to, all right, now I'm a man because I can sleep with women. And it was so seamless. So even when I started doing the work, it took me a while to uncover that process and what that did. And so then I started sleeping with just as many women as I could. And that was, I'm the man because I can do this and rah. And I think part of that was really valuable to me in regards to, um, I've now settled down, and I now have a partner, and I now have a 1 month old son. And this kind of, I'm trying to link this all together because I'm running with 4 or 5 different parts. So bear with me, mate. I apologize. I'm trying to link it all together. But the reason that it was beneficial was because it comes back to what Jordan Peterson talks about in terms of become the monster, but then get the monster under control. And so for me now, I'm really comfortable and confident that I've chosen my partner and that I really chose her because, and this is definitely arrogant, but I could have had anyone, but I chose to have you, and I'm choosing to be loyal, and I'm choosing to stay with you. And that's really beautiful in my eyes, because what I see, again, back to what we spoke about at the start, is the average man. The average man doesn't really get to choose because he hasn't really developed himself into a man that's worthy of choosing and worthy of getting lots of women. And so when he gets to 40, 50, what's the stereotype? He sleeps with his secretary, he sleeps with his nanny, he cheats because the first girl that comes around, a bit younger, a bit cuter, gives him a wink. He collapses to that pressure of the feminine beauty and the feminine enticing and teasing. And so he falls. And so I look at it now and I go, okay, that was really good. I definitely went down a dark path there, and it ruined a lot of relationships, and it caused me a ton of pain. And I think that suffering is avoidable. But I think that you should still be able to forge yourself into a man that can choose and then stay loyal and do that. So it's that balancing act. And so I think we're coming back to the question around values. It's like we value money, we value women. The point is, how can you create those into healthier, deeper level values, not the surface level money and women? I think that's really important because they can still be drivers of your life. As I mentioned, I want to make money, so I look for successful people, but it's going through a filter of, are they kind? Are they compassionate? Are they a role model that I look up to as a human being if they didn't have any money? And that's kind of what I look for. And then I'm looking for successful people. So I think, I'm sure you've seen Andrew Tate kind of grow in popularity and rise. And I've made 0 comments about him publicly or, on my Instagram or anything like that. And because I've just been mulling it over, and I'm still mulling it over, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But one thing that is, one thing I am pretty sure of is he's not a good role model.
Yes.
So I think I stand there. I think a lot of what he's saying is hitting a mark with young men. That's undisputable. So again, I want to try to start with the fact it's hitting a mark with young men. Young men are looking up to him. So you can't debate what he's saying is having some influence on young men. It is. So that's a thing. But I come back to, is he a good role model? And I think no. And I think he's potentially not far off being a good role model, but he's not right now. And I don't love his content from a point of view of, would I want my son looking up to this man? And I think, no, I wouldn't. And so that's kind of what, and I've stayed out of it and I haven't supposed. So I think, and the reasons why is because I think he lacks a bit of kindness. He lacks a bit of empathy. He lacks a bit of compassion. I think he's kind of entertaining and playing off the money and the chicks thing a bit too much. And I think he knows that. And I think what he says is only 50% or 75% right, which is what's tricking the young boys in. But that missing 50% or the missing 25% is a big piece of the puzzle that's really important. I think you either hit the mark or you don't. But when you 75% hit the mark, you can bring in a lot of people, and that's interesting for me watching his content, and interesting for me watching the rise of him. And I think the worst thing that could have happened is him getting deplatformed. I think that was the worst thing that we could have done, is deplatforming, because now you've just pissed off every young man that was following him, or not every, but a lot of the young men that follow him, pissed them off and shown that what Andrew Tate is saying is accurate because you've now deplatformed him. So I kind of went on a tantrum down to Andrew Tate, but back to the question, he's not a good role model, and the role models I look for are filtered through my values of kindness, empathy, compassion, service, leadership, responsibility.
Well, that's just phenomenal discernment that you just, an insight that you've provided there, Dylan, because it's so true. As young men, and I thinking back to being a young man, absolutely, it would have been, fast cars, muscle cars, women, making lots of money, and that's what we would have valued. But being able to take the time to discern what what that really means for me, or means for to a young man, can really shape how we evolve ourselves. And so then I come and I'm on the same page with you with Andrew Tate. So I can take it or leave him. I don't know if he's trying to. There's another gentleman in the U.S. That I follow quite a bit, and that's Garrett White with the Wake Up Warrior movement. And
love Garrett White.
Yeah, and Garrett can be Garrett can be in your face too. However, I think my take on Garrett is that he just comes from a real deep spiritual position, and I really appreciate how he's coming at it, and because it's the whole package, and it's not about some of the way Andrew presents
so
it.
I actually love that you brought him up. That's a really good point. That's a great point. There's a man who is highly successful, makes a lot of money, and is family orientated, and that's why I like him. I don't agree with everything, and I don't even necessarily agree with how brash he is sometimes, but I don't necessarily disagree with how brash he is either. Like, I'm kind of indifferent to his marketing and branding. I'm like, great, do what works for you. But as a role model, there's a role model that's 10 times better, in my opinion, than an Andrew Tate. He's got the Lambo, he's got a beautiful wife, but he's got 4 kids, and he's service driven. He takes a lot of responsibility of his life. He's fit. Hell, I think he said he's 46 or something. He's fit. So, and I want to extrapolate again. Okay, what gives rise to poor role models is, well, you have to have poor role models in that young man's life around him. He has to be, if he had good male role models around him, he's not getting sucked into poor male role models, or any, I'll stop using the word male, but he won't, because he's got the good role models already around him. So I'm massive now on, I've always been massive on personal responsibility, but from the parents' point of view, I'm big on that now too. I'm really, especially as a dad myself. I'm only a month in, and so I don't want to come onto a high horse here, riding in like on a 1 month high, and in 6 months' time you'll see me and I'll be bald and grey beard, but that's the issue is when young, and this is a massive issue for so many reasons. Young people are looking out into the world and saying, and they're seeing those statistics I mentioned. Oh, dad comes home and he's really stressed out. He argues with mum a lot. He's overweight. He sits on the couch, eats a burger and a packet of chips. I don't want to be like that. And then along comes someone like an Andrew Tate, who's very, very much in shape, has a lot of women around him, has a lot of fast cars, and has a lot of money, and starts to tap into this archetypal energy of men, because that's what he's doing. And speaking to that, of course your son is going to gravitate towards the guy who has these surface level success versus the dad who, and I don't want to shame that, because for me, it's very difficult to get up every single day and go to a job. That takes a man to get up every single day and go to a job you hate. But it takes a stronger man to say, fuck that path. I need to be a role model for I need to get up. If I need to get up at 4 a.m. to start working out, I'm going to do it. If I need to come home and sit in the car for 10 minutes and contain myself and breathe, and then enter the house with a different energy than the one at work, that's what I need to do. I need to spend that 10 minutes doing that. If I need to go and see a relationship coach because I'm realizing that my marriage is starting to lose intimacy, I need to do that. Why? You should be doing it for yourself, obviously, but fuck, do it for your family, do it for your kids. 99% of parents would say they take a bullet for their kid. Oh, I'd die for my kid. I'd do anything. Well, be a good role model for your kids. Like, live a massive life, live a beautiful life, be healthy, be like fuck, take responsibility. If your sons are looking to someone that is you deem to not be a good role model, go and find, because teenagers start to not listen to their parents as well. So start to go and find, and I want to really get deep on this because I think there's so much depth to this conversation. If you have friends that aren't good role models, like you're like, Dylan, where do I get good role models? It's like, well, your friends. I don't know. What are you doing hanging out with friends that aren't good role models then? Go get new friends. So you should have a community around you. And again, this is the last 100 years that we've drilled into people. That's been the lie of individualization and independence, and that's the most important thing, and leave your parents' house and go and buy another one and live away from grandpa and grandma. And we've drilled this, just be this individual family unit, when again, hundreds of years, thousands of years, we had a huge community, a huge tribe around us that helped us bring up our children. So we knew, I don't know where my son is right now, but I know the 50 people around me and they're all really good people. So I'm not too worried about what's going on right now. Now we don't know our neighbors. We've lost our connection to church, which the point I'm making in the loss of connection from church is the community aspect of that. Every single Sunday going, seeing the same people, knowing the same people, that aspect. I don't want to get into the politics of church and religion, but that aspect we've lost, which we don't have anymore. So
yes,
we really lost so much of what allowed us to flourish as human beings. And so it's no wonder that now every single generation over the last 100 years have just gotten worse on every possible metric. We've gotten worse. The only metric we've gotten better at is money. Why? Because we value money over everything else. Men will kill themselves in jobs they hate as long as they can drive the Ferrari or the Bentley, live in a $5 million house. And it comes from, I think it comes from a really good place. The ones with families definitely comes from a good place of, I need to provide for my family and provide for my family.
Yeah.
But how can you also take care of yourself, and how can you also be a good role model so that when you come home, you're not stressed out? So when you come home, you can spend good quality time with your family, good quality time with your partner, have a great relationship. And I think that's where it comes. It's back to personal responsibility and taking extreme ownership over our lives.
100%. I really appreciate you saying that as well, because that's one of the three tenets that I always talk about. And I know when a guy is ready, man's ready to do work with me, is when he's ready to take responsibility for where he is, for who he is, and what he aspires to become. And when he's ready to do those three things, then he's ready to make a change. But if he's only ready to do two of them, it's like the three-legged stool, then he's not really going to be committed. And it's so true that they got to do that.
And I think to give some practical tips on what to start. And this is something that I'm so fortunate I kind of figured this out just before my son was born. I'm looking 4 days before my son was born, I figured this out. Stop making goals, make standards, and have non-negotiables.
Nice.
And from that place, build your life. Don't have goals, get rid of goals. 90% of people don't achieve their goals. 95% of people don't do anything with their New Year's resolutions. Why? Because the standards that they set for their life are very low. And so what I did, I've got it right here, and that's why I remembered it, is 4 days before I said, okay, everyone's telling me I'm not going to be sleeping. Everyone's telling me that fatherhood's going to be really difficult. I run my own business. I can't just take time off or stop working. I have to keep fucking going. So this is going to be the hardest point of my life. I need to make sure my standards are solid. And so I set 10 standards for myself. Again, 3 days before my son was born. I ticked them off. He was my first 30 days. So I don't know why my camera's moving around. I got a new camera and it's moving. I think there we go. Okay, stop. So 10 every day, and I highlighted it. And there you'll see the ones that are missing is when my son was born and we had a 17-hour labor. And what's that allowed me to do is, in the hardest fire of my life, the biggest challenge, I've just looked at my standards and I've said, these are the standards that I am upholding no matter what. I'm doing this. And so the last week has been really difficult because now I'm 30 days in. And so that consistency, the wear and tear is starting to affect me. So it is, but again, because I've got these standards, I just look at it, I'm like, I'm doing this. And then the added layers of motivation is like, and then I look at my son and I'm like, all right, fuck, well, I'm showing up for him. I'm showing up for my partner. And so there's a really practical way is look at your life and set non-negotiables. And the key to doing that is being humble enough to admit where you're currently at. Because if you go sit down and you just set 10 goals, it's not going to work. But you sit down and you set 10, it doesn't have to be 10. Maybe you're at 3. And maybe that is, I'm going to brush my teeth twice a day, every day. I'm going to kiss my wife good morning, and I'm going to spend 5 minutes with my son. Maybe that's where you need to start.
Exactly.
Like, that's okay. but start there and set a standard and live them for 30 days. And then as I've been going, I kind of been tapping into how hard and how easy they are as well. And like, so when my son was born, my first one was wake up at 6 a.m. And day 2, I changed it. I was like, this is too hard. I'm getting up at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
But then what I did was a week later, I realized, oh, I'm good. And I didn't change my non-negotiable. This is the difference between a goal and a non-negotiable. I didn't change it. I stayed at 7 a.m., but I started getting up at 4 a.m. And then I started getting up at 4 a.m. and I was like, fuck, I'm going. Like I'm going at 4 a.m., 4 a.m., 4 a.m., 4 a.m. But then a Sunday would roll around and I'd be like, I'm going to sleep until 7 because that's my non-negotiable. And I'm fucking exhausted from the 6 days before of getting up at 4 a.m. So now I get to have a little sleep in on a Sunday because my non-negotiable is 7. Great. Now I'm up at 7 and then Monday, bang, back to 4. And so I didn't change it for 30 days and I've only just now changed it. And I've been getting up at 4, 6 days a week for the past 2 or 3 weeks now. And I only changed it and I changed it to 5 a.m. because maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow I want to sleep until 5 a.m. Maybe Sunday I want to sleep until 5 a.m. So the non-negotiable is something that the way that I word it is on your worst day, you can still get it done.
Nice. Love that. Love that. And what a great pivot from, setting goals instead of doing goal setting standards and non-negotiables. And I think that makes so much sense. So listen, when you're starting to work with because you're working with a younger demographic, is there a common thread with what they're struggling with today? Is there and if it is, what is that for these folks?
Yeah. I've started to change my answer on this the longer I've stayed in this space, because I used to say they were emotionally intelligent but not resilient. Oh, so to backtrack one step, what I think a man needs to be is backbone and heart, the balance of two, right? I think Steve Biddulph might have coined that, backbone and heart. And so the older generations, my dad's generation onwards, were real backbone, little bit of heart.
Yeah.
And I used to say, oh, the boys coming through, they're more heart and just lacking the backbone now. But now, if I'm really honest, and even when I said that and I look back at it, what you touched on is the feminization of boys and the attack on masculinity. All that has done is make boys less resilient. And so now what I'm actually finding is they lack both, because they still, once they get to a certain age, don't really open up. They've still got that hardened, like, oh, I need to be a man and not show emotions, but they can't get through difficult things. They can't face resilience. And not everyone, and I'm pretty biased because of my work, but I've noticed over the last 2 years, they're getting worse. Like 2 years ago when I started doing this work, the boys that I was working with versus now, they're worse off. They're less resilient because of the isolation, because of COVID, because of all these things that have happened over the last 2 years. They're worse off. And we're only just kind of seeing them come out and be worse off because everyone's reintegrating into society, but they're not.
Yeah.
And so now we're noticing, oh, fuck, they're really not okay. So I think what they're lacking is a bit of both, is genuine heart, like the genuine ability to tap into their emotions and then be resilient. And the reason why I think that is because the two are so intrinsically linked. They're so linked. And why I know, so if I look at the most resilient men, like if I was to look at the top 1% of resilient men, they're really connected to their heart, because that's the only way to get to the top 1% of resilience, is to be connected to your heart. Why, Dylan? How, Dylan? Explain that to me, Dylan. Because if I go through something and I don't have the ability to look at what I've gone through and learn from what I've gone through and step into vulnerability and heal what I've gone through and journal on it and meditate on it and cry and feel and move through it, and I just take the resilient path, I don't learn anything. I can't grow. I can't break out of that pattern. And so I'll just stay the same. Whereas if I can step into my heart and heal it and move through it, I'm never going to have to face that challenge again. Or when I do face that challenge again, I'm going to understand it at a whole new level and be able to overcome it and move through it. And so that's why the top 1% of most resilient people in the world are also the top 1% most connected to their heart. And I would say the same would be if you looked at the top 1% of people connected to their heart, the same would be true the other side. They would be very resilient people because they've done so much work on themselves that they understand, oh, when I face this challenge, this is my default. So I need to move out of my default and step into here. Oh, great. Now I've overcome the challenge. Awesome. So they're actually so intrinsically linked that you can't hit the top percentages of either without working on the other one. And so that's why it's so important to develop both.
Love that. What a great synergy too. And it makes so much sense. One needs to live with the other. We can't have one without it. We could be talking on for a couple more hours here, but I have one closing question here. And of everything that we've talked about today, and maybe there was something we haven't yet touched on, what would be the one takeaway you would want our audience to take with them?
Oh, number one takeaway. Start with compassionate accountability for yourself. You're looking at changing the world, stop. Look at changing yourself first. And just start with you. And the way that you do that is through compassionate accountability. So you're curious about yourself. You're curious about your flaws. You're curious about your weaknesses. You're not telling yourself, oh, you're a fucking idiot. Oh, you're a fucking fat ass. Oh, you're a fucking failure of a man. Oh, you're going to get stuck in shame and you're not going to be able to move through that. And you're going to probably push yourself worse and create a shadow for yourself that plays out more and more as those things that you're trying to heal. And so compassionate accountability is so critical in that you are curious and compassionate about, why am I unable to do that? Why am I sleeping until midday on a Saturday and a Sunday and drinking myself stupid Friday and Saturday night? Why am I doing that? What's going on? What haven't I healed? What haven't I addressed? What haven't I faced? And we can utilize, one thing that I love doing is utilizing language that men resonate with, because you can look at it from a feminine point of view. And if I was speaking to my partner or a woman, I'd say, you really need to lean into your intuition and just feel what you need to feel. And what is that, and that would get a really great response out of a partner or a woman. But for men, it's like, I'm like, you need to man up and face your demons and look at the man in the mirror and see what you need to face and see what you need to heal. And even saying that, it gives me goosebumps. Like, I want to go and fucking journal right now and face something that I need to face, right?
Yeah.
Because that taps into the archetypal energy of the man. It's the same thing. I'm pretty much saying the same thing, but one is tapping into the man and the masculine, saying, fucking man up. Man up and deal with your shit and stop bleeding on people that didn't cut you.
Yes.
And heal your stuff, right? And I'm saying it in a harsher tone to men because that's going to bang trick it. But if you're doing it for yourself, compassion, empathy. All right, what do I need to heal? What do I need to face? What's going on internally? What are the patterns that are playing out that I can't seem to break away from? Where did it start? There's so much juicy stuff. Like, I will be working on myself till the day that I die, because I just know there's so many different layers to why I say what I say, why I show up the way I do. There's just so many different layers. And when I come at it from a place of compassionate accountability, I can move through stuff fairly quick now. And that's taken me 9 years to get to a place where now I can move through my stuff pretty fast as I see them arise. Yeah. But also, I'm also getting coaches. I've got, 2 or 3 coaches I regularly work with. I used to see a therapist and a psychologist. I don't anymore, purely because I don't require what I thought that psychologists gave the value. And now I'm looking for coaches, and I have a men's group, and I've got all these other people that provide what. So go and get a tribe, a brotherhood around you. Go and get people around you and start listening to men that have what you want. To touch back on one of your last questions that I didn't touch on. If I'm taking advice from a miserable billionaire, he can only teach me how to be a miserable billionaire. He can't teach me anything else. So go and find men that have, if you are married and have kids, go and find a man that's happily married and has a great relationship with the kids, and go, hey man, how are you doing that? What are you doing? What's going on in your life? Like, go and get a brotherhood that can champion and challenge you to be the better version of yourself.
Love that. Love that. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Dylan, for spending time with me today. And it goes without saying, no matter what age, our lives are improved immensely when we have role models in our lives. And the best part is, Dylan, you can provide that, what you're doing in your work, and how and just so grateful that you're doing that, especially with your Prince to King program. And so if someone wanted to reach out to you and get involved with that program, how would they go about doing it?
Anywhere, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on TikTok now. I'm on YouTube. I'm everywhere. So Dylan.Roos on Instagram is probably the best. Everyone's got Instagram. Dylan.Roos, DYLAN.ROOS. And my website is dylanrooscoaching.com.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure I put all that information in the show notes so folks can reach out and get a hold of you. What a great conversation today, Dylan. Really appreciated having you on the show.
Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Thanks for everything that you're doing too.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.